Hello and welcome to 5-Minute Math. Today we are looking at the Algebra 1 concept of parent functions. This is standard A.7C in the great state of Texas, and we are using item number 48 of the 2018 released STAAR test. If you haven't done so already, please go ahead and take a moment to pause the video, work this problem out on your own, unpause it, and we will look at our answers together. So we have the graph of g of x equals x squared. It was transformed here. And wow, we've got this negative x over 4 squared. Okay, so what exactly are we doing here? Well, let's take a look at just a basic x squared. So this g of x is going to look like this. So here's your basic, most vanilla graph that you can even think of. This g of x equals x squared. This is the simplest form of a quadratic function we can think of, right? And it's going to have a basic parabola. It's going to face up, and it's going to be like that. So what we're going to do is we're going to transform it. And so let's take a look at what we did here. So what I'm going to do is, instead of x over 4, I'm going to look at it like this. I'm going to say h of x equals negative, and then I'm going to do this. I'm going to say 1/4. So that's the same thing as x over 4. So 1/4 x over 4, 0.254, same thing. Okay? And so let's see what happens, because we actually have two things happening here. So this is the form of h of x equals ax squared. So what happens with this a right here? Well, this a, that's going to be this multiplier that we're actually putting right there. So we've got two things that we need to see happening here. First, this 1/4 x and then having that squared, right? We could go ahead and simplify that if we wanted to, because it's going to be negative, because that negative is on the outside. 1/4 times 1/4, it's going to be 1/16. And then x times x is going to be x squared. So really, that's what we're looking at. We're looking at that h of x equals negative 1/16 x squared. So this a is negative 1/16. Okay? So that's what we're looking for. And the question is, what happens when we have a negative 1/16? Well, several things happen with this a. When a is greater than 1, which it's not, right, the graph actually narrows. The greater the 1, the narrower it's going to get. If a happens to be between 0 and 1, so if it's between those two, it actually is going to widen. And the closer to 0 it's actually going to get wider, fatter and fatter and fatter and fatter. Now, if a is less than 0, which this is finally what we're dealing with here, right? It is actually going to flip or reflect. It actually becomes a downward facing graph, and it flips across the x-axis. And it's still either going to narrow or widen, depending on whether it's less than. So if a is less than 0, but still larger than negative 1, now we're going to widen, which is where we're sitting right here. It's still going to flip, but it's going to widen. And then if a is simply less than negative 1, that's when it's going to still flip, but it's going to narrow. So all of that needs to happen. So it looks like we're going to reflect over the x-axis and have that horizontal stretch. In this case, it's a widen. But let's double check on our graphing calculator. So we're going to go to our y equals. We're going to go ahead and plot both. The blue is going to be the x squared, and then the red is going to be our negative x over 4 squared. Hit the graph. Take a look at that. Blue is your regular vanilla, but look at that red. It is very, very stretched out, wide, and it is flipped upside down. So reflected over the x-axis. Our answer here is F.